How we doing, my Pro Design Builder family? I'm Sam, also known as the Pro Design Builder. I'm the best in the business. It's not even close. This week, we're going to be working on house flipping versus flipping new development. What are the key differences? And I'm going to go into the background and kind of share some stories about what the key differences are so that it could really resonate in your head on what this looks like versus what it doesn't. In this video, I'm going to share the 5 core differences. I'm going to be breaking down things like financial experience, execution, team building, and stuff like that you're going to need to get to the next level. This group is specifically for real estate investors who want to make the transition into new development and they don't know where to start. I am your guide. A little bit about me. I build dreams, and I started as a wholesaler. And I didn't even know I was going to get into real estate. My wife handed me a book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It kind of changed the game for me. It really spoke my language. That's the first time I really started looking at real estate. And that gave me the itch to do what is the hardest thing to do, which is take messy action. So I was green when I started as a wholesaler. I was green as a house flipper. As a matter of fact, I'm going to share an example about learning literally on YouTube how to flip a house. And it was mainly specifically to check contractors' work and what they're sending out to you as what is acceptable versus what is not acceptable. As a house flipper, sometimes, especially in the beginning, you are susceptible to accepting certain types of work because you don't know how it looks. We're going to kind of dive into certain aspects like that versus new development and how that whole process works. Can't wait to just dive in to this subject topic. So let's talk about the core differences. I'm going to go down the line and explain. Flipping a house uses the existing structure. So the biggest difference that I would say between a house, a new home, and an existing structure is the structure is built and the roof is dried in. And if you ever did a major renovation and you've seen behind the walls and you've seen studs and stuff like that, then it's the same thing as a major renovation. A lot of people haven't done those caliber of remodels to know and understand. Once you have a dried in structure, it's the same in regards to finishing off a home. There is significant challenges or differences that are going to be important for you to know. So cosmetic improvements. Sometimes you might come in and not necessarily want to tear the whole house up. That was a mistake for me as a new investor, not just doing a complete remodel, kind of doing it, partialing it out, not cutting corners, but kind of cutting corners until I understood that, listen, you're selling a piece of art and you want someone to pay for it. It's going to take a different mindset for you to put that caliber of finish on your home. It gets the highest and best use when I'm talking about flipping versus new developments. All right, so limited by existing conditions. You can only put so much square footage on. You can only expand that certain home past its envelope. It might be already at its limit. Also, too, if you ever did something like an addition, I highly don't recommend. It needs to be bang on with the engineering when you're doing any type of addition, especially if it's a block structure, which is what we deal with in South Florida. It's almost not worth the headache of adding additional square footage just because you really don't get it back by the time the city is done with you and all of the approvals that it needs to execute on that kind of renovation. In the Northeast, it makes more sense. You can add levels, add value, and stuff like that. Generally, your building envelope is what keeps you confined into that particular properties. Low to moderate as far as the size of the renovation you might choose to put on when you're flipping a house versus what is and lower construction risk because you're dealing with stuff that's already there. If you're upgrading stuff, then that could be something that triggers something different, like the plumbing. We have cast iron plumbing. Sometimes you have to upgrade it beneath the slab and into the street, something like that. If you're not doing anything like that, it's typically low risk on a construction site. So you may not even need that many pieces as far as people. You may be able to run with a couple handymen, have a great painter, have a great cabinet guy, and kind of do it yourself. That's kind of what house flipping looks like. I've always kind of said that I can flip a house with my eyes closed, just because I've done it so much and so often. I know the rhythm. I know how the execution, how the ordering, and all of that stuff goes. It's just very easy process to me. Whereas for other people struggle with it because it requires you to make a lot of quick little decisions to complete a home. So, and that's the advantage that I have in design build, is we're accustomed to handling all of this, so I can speak to it at a very in-depth level. So now let's talk about flipping new construction. What does that look like, and what are the key differences there? So there's land and new builds. Acquiring new land, that's going to be a new skill that you need to learn. New building is I always say highest and best use. So you're creating the highest and best use for that parcel, which adds value. So that's the key difference there. So ground up value creation, which I just talked about. Total control of the product, very important stuff. Because it's a new build, you are landing studs and landing walls that were never existing to begin with. So you could get everything exactly where it needs to be, wired, executed on with very minimal hurdles. So some of the hurdles you may run into may be something about whether it's permitting or something in the ground. If you do your due diligence, which you will, then those would happen a lot less for you. It's good for you to know. Also, too, the timeline. The timeline is different. The timeline is more 10 to 18 months when you factor in planning and architecture, permitting, and then actual construction time. The timing could stretch out depending on how quickly you're able to get your plans approved by the city and move forward with the project, and you have construction. And then obviously you have a different operation for your construction management and overseeing that sort of project. There's a lot of things that you're going to need to know at an in-depth level and be educated on how to move through that certain process. That's what the key difference is between house flipping and flipping new development. Let's move on. Now let's talk about the money. You know, what house flipping looked like. It's about quick turn transactions when it comes to house flipping. The margins are more compressed, right? So you can only increase the value so much within that existing envelope, unless it was like obviously the worst house on the street, which is exactly how you want to buy it, in the best neighborhood. Then it was, if it's original down to 1960s, then now when you add value to it, you could add significant amount of value to it. I'm actually looking at one in Boca that is just sitting there. It doesn't make sense. It's fully paid off. And I need to make sure that I keep my eyes on that particular project. So the gaps is smaller in the transaction. And when it comes to new development, you're manufacturing the value. You are creating the highest and best use for that parcel that didn't exist before. Also, too, the important thing is people love new. People pay for new. You pay for new, I pay for new, I pay for a new car, I pay for a new house. Everyone wants to talk about and say, listen, I bought a new house. There's something about that adds additional value to your plate, which is fantastic. So now let's talk about the skill set differences. What are the skill sets that you're going to need to turn the page and to be the best, whether flipper or developer, that you're going to be? So let's talk about it. What flippers need to know. You need to know how to complete an estimate about repairs. You need to know general basics about putting a scope together. You need to know managing subs. You need to know how to comp properties. That's essentially the skill set that you need to flip a house effectively. Like I said to you, I learned how to flip a house on YouTube. But I already bought the house. I already hired the people. Like looking at YouTube, I might want to try it and would try it. I bought tools. I became a contractor, and then I started really operating and understanding my craft really at the ground levels, which is really great for me because there's lessons learned in every aspect of growing in your growth when it comes to these particular projects. When we're talking about what developers must master, you need to master land acquisition. How do you get in contact with these homeowners? How do you analyze this piece of parcel to even know it's a good deal? What else is going on in the neighborhood? It's very tricky. You do not want to be the first in the neighborhood. Absolutely not. You always want to have a set comp that's already in the neighborhood if you ever considered developing. So there's opportunity zones, and it's attractive for people to go into the opportunity zone and build something because it's going to be cheap. The problem is the neighborhood doesn't catch up for another 10 to 15 years. Right? Or you could be that guy that comes into the neighborhood, set the comp, then from there, set your own comp, then build in that particular neighborhood. You could do that as well. For your first transaction, would say build in an area that people are already building, which is going to be important. You're going to also need to know zoning and entitlements. What can I put on this particular parcel? Can I put this duplex or triplex or fourplex that I'm envisioning in my head and hope that they go for? Are there other like types that are zoned in that area for what you want to do, which is the easiest way to kind of find out? There's also zoning maps with the city that you could click on, and you could see in the area above the address, what is it zoned? You just need to know what is it zoned when you get the rating, and now you can plug it into the computer and then tell you exactly what the capabilities are of that particular parcel. Or if I need to change the zoning, get a variance on the zoning, how does the entitlement process works to accomplish that? Those are the things that are going to be important for you to learn, know, and understand at a high level. Also, too, working with architects and engineers. Engineers and architects work synonymous. I wouldn't even break those up. Really, it's a marriage. Architect puts the whole plan together. Engineering signs off on the structural elements of a building. That's the relationship between the two. Knowing how they work, knowing how to work with them, knowing how to modify plans if you have to. I don't really recommend that very early on. Learn as you go. That's what I'm here for. If and when you're ready, I'll be able to help guide you on exactly what that looks like. Also, capital structure. How do you position debt? How do you get an investment and give parts of it as equity stake in the project? How do you set up your capital structure? You created this new development project. You may have not invested all of your money into it, but using these different levers to get the project done. That's going to be important for you to know and understand. And then the construction management. If you haven't done anything like this before, if you're a GC, then it's easier for you to make this transition, to add these pieces to your pie, because you have the construction element and the relationships to go off without a hitch. So most people don't have that aspect. It's going to be important. I don't care what the people are telling you online. You could do it yourself. Being a GC is not easy. It's not. Right? There's a lot of variables, there's a lot of logistics, there's a lot of calculation to make sure that your project goes off without a hitch. It requires really experience. That's why you hire a professional, which is a general contractor or a builder, to build your house. And how do you weave through that? Who's considered good? I would not be hiring a friend that is a GC that builds houses. I would not. That's just not something that I'm doing. I'm going to hire a credible builder that's building in the area, that has a great reputation and has been around for a long time, especially now with construction slow. The last thing that you want is to get stung by a GC. That's kind of how I got into the business. Is I got stung several times on my first flip. Hired, fired, hired, fired, hired, fired. I said, I'm not going to allow this sort of thing to happen to me. So I'm going to run it, right? That's kind of how that worked out for me. So those are some of the things. How to manage budget. Inside of your budget, and really looking at everything that you do through the numbers is going to be very important. So when you understand a project through the numbers, you're going to also understand where can I get some cost savings. In our industry, we like to call it value engineering. So how do you value engineer your home to get the most out of it? And there's very good ways to do that with design. So doing design with choosing the right color palette, choosing the right finishes so your home appears at the highest and best values, or appears high-end, or use some high-end elements to finish off the home is going to be important in making sure that your product sells at a very high level. One of the things that we're accustomed to doing is handling this design aspect of it. I provide that as a service to my clients that work with us and work with our teams. You have the ability to craft that without paying retail for a designer to create the design for your homes, which is good. So let's talk about some of the financial differences. So in a flip, you could get in and out of the projects. I remember at a certain point, I was getting in and out of flips 45 days, 50 days back on the market, triggering reappraisal clauses and the deeds and stuff like that. Anyways, this is quick turn if you know what you're doing. You could quick turn, and the profits typically look like $45,000, $50,000, $60,000 around that, and then sometimes you could hit those higher thresholds as well if you buy it. But certain markets kind of dictate how that happens. You really can't necessarily get those numbers all the time, and that's the financial difference when it comes to house flipping versus new developments. When you're looking at new development, there's a few different things. So while you're building, land tends to appreciate, is because they're not making any more of it. That's just the reality. So if you grab a piece and hold on to a piece, they're not making more land and they're continuing to build. And also, too, interesting stat, not interesting, we knew exactly where we're at. We're at 4.7 million homes short in the U.S., right? There's a mathematical issue that needs to be solved that's not going to be solved easy, and you are going to be the next person to solve that problem, right? The problem is so big, it's not going to get solved anytime soon, so that creates value, right? Every market is a little bit different. And when you are looking at a new development project, you're looking into the future. So when you're looking into the future, you're looking 18 months, 2 years into the future. You're not looking at necessarily today, right? There's going to be a bunch of opportunities that's going to show up and start showing up, which is fantastic for us. But the thing is, you're going to have to get ready. You're going to have to get into your bag and create your own economy when we're talking about getting the skills to pay the bills, right? One of the things that I say, I decided, a long time ago was I was going to be a professional at what I did, right? Really do the work and hire consultants and then I got my mentors to really down and become a professional in my business. And that was something that was important to me, and that's kind of what I kind of pass on to the people that work with us. So we're talking about profits, right? Yes, you're waiting longer. So 10 to 18 months to finish out a transaction, but your profits look different. So between 150 to and up, right, on your project, right? If you're on the higher end of the project scale, you're looking at several $100,000 return, or else it wouldn't be worth the trouble, right? I would say aim to shoot for hundreds of thousands of dollars in transactions, not control housing. Unfortunately, that's not the situation that we're in. I understand everybody's heart if they have ideas of doing rent control and different aspects of housing. reality is to be worth your time. You're trading your time, right? We all have 24 hours in a day. That's all we got, right? Trading your time, highest and best use of my time will mean a bigger project that's going to give me a return that's significant, right? It does not make sense to kind of small when we're talking about building, these projects, right? Then we talk about the cash flow, right? Tend to get paid quicker, obviously, with house flipping, but you are also so you get paid quicker when we're talking about new development, and then also in new development you're looking at a longer term to get paid, but you get paid well at the end for your professionalism, right? Let's talk about operations. What does that look like? You could generally operate house flipping with handyman, GC, painter, some subs. Essentially that's kind of it, and you could kind of, as a house flipper, right? People as house flippers just got lucky, right? And then some people are actual professionals. So the people that are professionals right now, even in this market, are doing well. They're putting together nice projects that people want to buy. The other day, I posted a project that I did a couple years back that was supposed to be a forever home for a client, and how it hit the market. In this market, which all of this doom and gloom, all of this scariness, when you're talking about, real estate, sold for, above ask, bidding war, on the home because the home was finished so well, right? That's the type of thought process you need to go in and sell your product, because now you become a hot commodity, right? You could do that with value engineering, right? Making sure that you get that right. Let's talk about new construction. So, it's more predictable, more step by step, more this and that, more plan for this, execute on that. There is more steps involved with it, and for that you are paid handsomely, right? And then also too, it's more a structured environment with payments and draws and deadlines and right. We're big on milestones. So getting to a certain point where you get the foundation dug, and then now you pour the slab, and then now you have the framing up, and then now you have the ceiling. Now you're watertight on the ceiling, and now you have your shingles, or you have your barrel tile, like stuff like that, right? It requires more steps, and because it requires more steps, you get paid handsomely for it. So your vendor team. What does the vendor team look like for a house flipper? Like I said, GC, painter, quick put together crew. But for you, it's going to look like you're going to need an architect, you're going to need that engineer, obviously, you're going to need a GC, you're going to need a realtor, you're going to need a nice attorney, and you're going to need some other pieces like a surveyor, and you're going to need a lead mining source for your new projects, right? You need a few other pieces, but the good thing about it is all of these people are professionals, and you're using them as needed to build your team to execute on this plan, right? And that's kind of one of the things that's important. Is I got lucky, and I say that I got lucky is because I realized that when I build somebody a custom home, I'm building their dreams, right? One of the most fulfilling things is once I was done getting that thank you. I remember one project, a client would come in every time she come in, she'd cry, and the guys were like, man, every time she comes in, man, she's just crying all the time. It's because it was so beautiful. It was so what she envisioned and what she wanted that it was worth crying, right? On stuff like that is going to be very, very important. So let's talk about risk, right? One has risk, and I would say the biggest risk is not being able to sell both of them, right? If you get a building off the ground and you can't sell it, that's risk, and it becomes a problem, right? And that's the same thing too. If you're house flipping and you can't sell it, and I've been there on both, it becomes a risky transaction. So there's risk involved in that. So in a house flip, I feel like something always comes up, whether it's structural walls, whether it's termites, whether it's a loose joint, whether it's faulty electrical, whether it's what you name it, I've kind of seen it. It always come up, and you always have to rectify it to put the house back on the market. So there's those risks that are always involved, and if you're not savvy or don't know structures, then you could fall trap to something that is bigger than your mouth, than you could really eat. So then inspections and stuff like that. Sometimes you could forego buyer inspections and appraisal, so those type of things really affect the risk of that particular. Whereas with new development, you have your permit delays and city, and then you have your hurdles with getting the architect to get you the plans in a timely fashion. Then you have the time with selecting the material, sitting down with a designer and finalizing all of the choices. So then now you're not making decisions on the fly, but now you could get a concrete hard number from the design portion, and then you get a concrete hard number from the contractors, and you send it out to bid. Now you have your plans are positioned in a way that is solid, right? It's not going to continue to move and deviate on you. And then also too, it's good to have contingencies in your contracts to minimize your risk when you are looking to take on a project, moving forward. So let's talk about the mindset as well, right? Fast, house flipping, fast. I need to get in, I need to get out, I need it to be cheap. I need it to, make the most amount of money and hold it for the least amount of time. That's just that's what house flipping is, and that's how you make your money, right? When it comes to new projects, the speed of money is delayed, but then now you're getting more. Now you can make a bigger investment. Now you can take that and make 2 lots, right? And work on it and build it, and then once you get paid again, now you could redeploy that, right? And now you're really gaining wealth, which is what's important, instead of getting taxed like the taxman. And there's tax benefits with the way that you structure your project as well. So you got a lot out of that. I said a lot, I shared a lot, but at the same time, I hope that I'm not a gatekeeper. That's a good thing about what I do and how I do it. I just truly feel like it's important for you to connect with people that are going to move the needle for you in the future and help you push you to your dreams. Like I said, I was happy that I got to build dreams, and now I understand that I get to push people to their dreams, and that's even more powerful for me if you get to work with us, right? Outside of that, if you haven't hit like and subscribe, suggest that you do that. Also, hit the link in the comment to join our group of house flippers that are changing the game in new development. Have a good day.